Hello world, it's Birdo Prey 5, Qapla, and welcome to my review of Star Trek Strange New Worlds, Season 1, Episode 2, Children of the Comet. And we start immediately with a previously on, and I hit my head. I'm like, you told us this was going to be this wasn't going to be serial Trek. This was going to be episodic Trek. So why is there a previously on for episodic Trek? You've been telling us for a year Strange New Worlds is going to go return to episodic Trek. Well, the one thing you don't have in episodic anything is a previously on, because the previously on doesn't really effing matter. And somehow, despite last week's not really mattering, they still messed this up. They still messed it up by giving us a previously on that really doesn't matter. The only stuff they brought up really didn't matter at all. They should have just ignored the previously on. So when the show actually begins, we're open to an alien species walking on a random planet. And it's actually Cadet Uhura giving the cadet's log. And she says there's really nothing for her to do because she's a cadet. And it's just this random alien species. There's a comet passing by their planet. Why does the Enterprise have to study a comet? I mean, it seems like well below the pay grade of the flagship of the Federation, but fine. Okay. They quickly switch off of that to the point that Uhura is being hazed by Ortegas. Uhura has been invited to the captain's table for dinner, and it's a party in his quarters, and Ortegas is telling Uhura how the captain wants to ask, will ask questions about what's actually happening on the ship. And Uhura says her father liked to say she was unburdened in conversations, so by boundaries. So Ortegas says, so this is going to be fun for you. And so they get the welcome into to Pike's quarters, and say, oh, Lieutenant Ortegas, who's in very informal clothing, and Cadet Uhura, who Ortegas lied to and said, oh, you should wear your dress uniform. So Cadet's all in her dress uniform, and Ortegas says, that's you just got your first square on Enterprise bingo. So it was all a joke. It was a joke. Anyway, so they get there, and the new blind engineer is there. So the blind Andorian is actually not an Andorian. He's a subspecies of Andorian on his planet. They live under the ice, and they're blind. Anyway, so this guy's really pissed. He doesn't want help. He doesn't look at himself as blind. His species is supposed to be the way they are. They have a telepathic link instead that he says is superior to vision. Anyway, so Spock threw a carrot at him that he caught to prove to Uhura he didn't need to be able to see to do things. And we get the very first glimpse that Spock might have something physically for Uhura, which makes no sense because Spock was pretty clear he was physically into T'Pring in the last episode. But in this episode, the Andorian says, I like her. And Spock says, indeed, after she walks away. So Pike is telling a story everybody's laughing at him. Apparently, when Pike was a security, was still in Starfleet security in the early days, he was, of course, it was a Nausicaan. He was chasing a Nausicaan, and he caught himself in the Nausicaan's pants and fell over. Meanwhile, Uhura gets up from the table and is humming. And so Pike's like, "What is that you're humming?" And she's like, "Sorry, bad habit." And it's an old folk song from her village in Kenya. Her village in Kenya. She is not from Kenya. No, this is a problem. Okay, this is a problem. They're retconning Uhura to be from Kenya, probably because that's where Obama was from. But regardless, I remember Nichelle Nichols telling this story in her own words to a bunch of Trek fans. And she was telling us a story of how she got to Star Trek. And she wasn't 100% on board. She had some failings. She wasn't 100% sure, but Gene Roddenberry himself came to her and says, "Let's talk your history of your character." And he says, "Maybe you're from the United States of Africa." And her eyes glowed. At the thought that she was from a united Africa that happened some point in the future. She doesn't want to be from Kenya. She was floored to be from the United States of Africa. Now this woman isn't even dead yet, and they're retconning her entire history away from her. This meant something to her. If you watch that interview, I don't know where to get it, but if you watch that interview and you see the glow coming off of Nichelle Nichols when she was describing how she was so happy to discuss Uhura's life outside the Enterprise, you would know this meant something to her. And then to pour the pain on, now we're hearing Uhura's backstory in the series. They're destroying Uhura's backstory every fucking time they do this. Why do they have to? Why? Uhura is now a tragic character. Before she came to Starfleet, both her parents and her older brother died in a shuttle accident. Like, how many shuttles are there? It's always a shuttle accident. They're not even trying. A shuttle accident. Anytime people need to die, it's a shuttle accident. So we get another tragic backstory. Uhura lost her mother, her father, and her older brother, to a shuttle accident, and she ended up living with her grandmother, who had gone to Starfleet, and so that's why she chose to go to Starfleet. Although even at this point, she wasn't 100% sure she wanted to be there. So Spock tells her, you should really decide what you want, Uhura, because if you don't want to be in Starfleet, there's several thousand people who want to be where you are, and we push them aside to bring you up to the Enterprise because you are just so great at your job that, for now, these other people can't be here. So you figure out if this is what you really want to do or not. You owe it to those people who really want to be here. Also, during the dinner, Pike is asking Uhura where does she want to be in 10 years, and that freaked Pike out as he asked, because we realized from last week's episode that Pike's death, or at least what he thinks is his death, the accident that's going to happen with the accident that's going to happen is about 10 years from now. So he used to think a decade was a long time away. Now he doesn't think it is that long away. So now Spock comes in and tells, after the dinner was over, Spock tells the Pike and number one, who were talking in his quarters, that there's a problem with the comet. So the comet is on screen, and we see the comet crash into the planet. And we're like, oh no, the comet crashed into the planet. Everybody's dead. But of course, it was just a computer simulation. Then they reverse it. They play it forward. They reverse it. And Spock's voice says, as you can see, Captain, we've got 2 days before the comet hits the planet. So we're all like, oh, okay. So like, what can we do about it? And they all give their ideas. And not Ortega, the Noonien-Singh, the security chief, she says we could put engines on a photon torpedoes and alter the course of the comet just enough so it doesn't hit the planet. And Pike's good with that. The engineer, the Andorian engineer, is a little pissed. He's like, sure, he's like, Pike asked the security chief, how long will that take? And she says, probably about an hour. And the engineer's like, of course, you give him a rosy time with my work. He's the one who's going to have to make the changes. So like, Pike, why is Pike asking her how long it's going to take? Pike should be asking his engineer how long it's going to take. But whatever. I guess it was close enough. So that's what they go start doing. They start working on getting these torpedoes set up with engines on them, impulse engines, to move the ship. And then we get the opening credits, where we get where no man has gone before spiel, or no one has gone before, excuse me. It would have been better if it was where no man has gone before. It's where no one has gone before. So Mama Pray, not happy with that. Okay. So they also found on the comet that there's a structure. There's a structure on the comet, but it's enormous and mostly subterranean, says number one. And Sam Kirk is there because he's a xenoanthropologist, just like Michael Burnham. So he's like, the security chief says maybe it's just a derelict spacecraft. Maybe it's not a comet at all. So Pike asks Sam Kirk if there's any civilizations that's ever lived on a comet, and Sam Kirk says it's the first he's heard of one. He says, Leon, you, Spock, Sam, and Cadet Uhura, she was on the, this doesn't make much sense. She just happened to be on the rounds for the next away mission, but by chance, this away mission really needs someone who who can speak alien. Oh, and here's a new one. So Nurse Chapel is giving everyone the hypo spray, and we hear "ow" from Uhura. She's like, "You could have warned me." And Nurse Chapel says, "If I warned you, people would know it hurts. I already had a runner this week," meaning the person who ran away in last episode. Hypo sprays are supposed to be painless. God damn it. How do you retcon hypo sprays to hurt? One of the best things about the future I loved as a child was that, hey, we're going to have needles in the future that don't fucking hurt to take. I hated taking needles from doctors as a kid. I'm sure many of you did too. When I looked to the future of Star Trek, literally, I was in love with the fact that they were going to give us needles in the future that didn't fucking hurt. And now, all of a sudden, they've retconned it to now they hurt again? What the fuck? Why would you do that? Why would you do this to us, you stupid schmucks? I'm more than angry than I've ever been. Of all the retcons they could have retconned, almost as bad as a Klingork is the fact that hypo sprays now hurt. Fuck you, CBS. Fuck you, Alex Kurtzman. And fuck you, Nurse Chapel. I don't care how hot you look. You are a bitch. You've ruined medicine. You've ruined the medicine of Star Trek. Now, what I did like, do like, is that they did point out that they were beaming over to the Comet that it has a fraction of the gravity of Earth. And they need to beware of that. Because I assumed that they would take that into account, since they were telling us ahead of time, hey guys, remember the gravity is much, much lower on a comet. We don't want to see anybody fly off into space. I assumed that meant, hey, somebody is going to fly off into space because they forgot that gravity is low. And in all Star Trek, I can't remember a single time before where they worried about gravity. But I said, hey, this is actually great. They're worrying about gravity. This is something they don't normally do. Of course, the joke was on me because never again did the gravity situation come up. And even after Sam Kirk gets thrown across the room, nobody cares. In fact, he falls down to the ground with seemingly as much gravity as there is on Earth. Where is that low gravity? You can't tell people, hey, mind the low gravity, and then you record as if you're in Earth gravity. It's worse. It's worse than not. You should have just not mentioned it at all. So Uhura is looking at this golden egg that's in the comet. Oh, also, if there's low gravity if there's almost zero gravity on the comet, there can't be an atmosphere. But for some reason, this comet has an atmosphere which you can breathe in. They even say you could take off your mask. And they even take off the mask of Samuel Kirk in a moment after he gets a jolt and he flies across the room and he needs to have his heart shocked to restart, defibrillated. Samuel Kirk makes a reference to Yahtzee, not Yahtzees, but the 20th century game from Earth, Yahtzee. That one, I don't think Yahtzee is going to survive into the 23rd century. Sorry, I don't think it's going to survive into the 22nd century, in all honesty. But, whatever. Defibrillator mode is enabled, and apparently there's a, if you put the tricorder onto the Starfleet emblem that's on your EV suit, that's where you defibrillate somebody. So a couple of hits with the defibrillator, and he's stable, but he still needs to get back to the ship to be safe. But unfortunately, at this point, all frequencies are down. They're cut off from the ship. They're on their own, says the security chief. So what has happened? Well, apparently this alien ship came out of nowhere and fired at the Enterprise. The Enterprise first tried to fire torpedoes to destroy the Comet, so as the Comet to stop the Comet from destroying this to destroy the Comet from destroying this planet, because as Pike and Number One tell us, that Starfleet helps planets that are in need, even as long as they don't have to show themselves, as long as they can hide the fact that it's them from the pre-warp civilization, that it's Starfleet's policy to save a planet that's about to be destroyed. When did this become the policy? Because in Star Trek The Next Generation, the complete opposite is the absolute policy. We've had Picard more than once say, let them die. More than once he said, you should have let them die, to Beverly. How dare they bring somebody aboard the ship? How dare Data take a pen pal and then try to help her from dying because her world was going to be destroyed by volcanic activity. And then Worf's brother, his people, they were going to die too. And Worf's brother says, we could save some of them. And Captain Picard was like, no, we could, but we're not, because that's against the Prime Directive, even helping a doomed civilization. And then, for not that it should count for anything, but in the JJ tracks, the second movie, the very beginning of the movie was a complete violation of the Prime Directive. And that was no worse than what they're trying to do here. So we do get a scene here where Uhura and Spock are trapped on the Comet, and Uhura points out that Nurse Chapel was flirting with Spock earlier, and she absolutely was. So this is where I believe Uhura is trying to figure out if Spock is interested in Nurse Chapel, and he is not, which is most unfortunate for Nurse Chapel. But even on TOS, she had a thing for Spock, and Spock really did not have a thing back for her. Uhura in this episode was a bit sad. She keeps talking about how, she wasn't ready for this. It's her first mission. She's not even sure she wants to be there. And everybody's telling her that if you don't want to be here, you should get out of the way. You're blocking room. Of course, by the end of this episode, it'll be the opposite. People will come up to her and say, we're really glad you're here. So the Enterprise has been following this Comet. Out of nowhere, this giant ship comes out from I don't know where and starts firing on the Enterprise. And they're pissed at the Enterprise. Why is the Enterprise trying to adjust the Comet? And so they hail the Enterprise and they say, we are the shepherds. And Pike is like, shepherds? And the lady's like, well, that's what the universal translator says. So, okay, fine. we're the shepherds of the Manic. And there's like, Manic, you mean Comet? And they're like, this is a Manic, you idiot. Manics have traveled throughout history to give life or take life. And he's like, my race has taken up the cause of the Manic. Their cause is preordained. And Pike's like, there's millions of people. It'll destroy your Manic into just as many pieces and kill people. And the shepherd says, are you a reasonable man, Captain? He's like, yeah, I'm reasonable. He's like, well then, entertain the possibility that the Manic is not a comet. It is an ancient instrument, an ancient arbiter, one of the very few left in the galaxy. If it is will to move, it will move. If it's his view to bring life, it will bring life. If it is his choice to die, and even die with it, then that is what will happen. It is preordained. And Pike is saying blowing up a planet full of people is not preordained. And he said, you said you were a reasonable man, Captain. So how can you know? He says, before their sons burned, his race was charged with the protection of the Manic. They don't even remember. He says, I don't even remember. We don't even remember making the promise, but we did. So it's their mission is to spread life across the galaxy. But it's nobody's desire to interfere. So the security woman, she says that their ship is faster than us, and it's got more powerful weapons. We can't take them on. And Ortega's like, yeah, we need to just buy time. We need to get out of here and come back with more ships. Anyway, Pike says, you have your sacred duty and we have ours. We don't interfere with other species, but we also don't let them die. He says, you say you don't interfere, you mean no disrespect, but your crew has desecrated the temple on its surface. So Ortega says, I guess they know about the landing party. I was wondering that too. Did they know? So he says, any further action to rescue them will be an act of war. As Pike says, find a way to get to the landing party right now. Break the laws of physics if you have to. Yeah, Captain. I'll get right on that. I do like the fact that they can't just immediately come up with some cockamamie loophole for the laws of physics. So they ask Cadet Uhura, what's the chances? The security woman asks Uhura, what's the chances of getting through this? And she's like, it's a toss-up. So Spock comes up and says, might I say that your humming indicates you have stress? Might I suggest that you're actually in a better place than you were? And he's like, Sam Kirk's actions has eliminated one of the two things, so you can't touch the egg. And Uhura says, you shouldn't actually be here. You should be relying on somebody who's not going to get you all fried to a crisp. And so she also asked Spock, was that a pep talk? He's like, yeah, it was a pep talk. She's like, you're pretty bad at it. And so then Spock asked another question. Is this your first time in danger? She's like, no, yes, no, yes, no, yes. And he's like, You didn't intend on being here, but you are here. Hypotheticals are irrelevant. Today, you are quite simply the only person for the job. Will you rise to see it through? And now Uhura is like, hey, that's a much better pep talk. Your pep talk. I don't think Spock even understood what it was. Anyway, Uhura goes back to humming, and wouldn't you know it, the egg starts humming back. And Spock is the only one who notices it. The cave is reacting to your voice. And Uhura tries a different hum, and yeah, it's humming back. It's quite obvious now. Everything's reacting to music. She's like, music, it responds to music. Meanwhile, back on the Enterprise, number one is hearing a signal coming from the comet itself. So he's like, open the signal, and it's the same melody that Uhura was singing in his quarters the night before. So, computer identified the song. It originated in Kenya, and now they're all laughing. And he's like, that cannot be a coincidence. No, it's not a coincidence. For some reason, the comet is singing what Uhura is singing. Meanwhile, Uhura is still singing on the comet. The different pitches result in different responses, says Spock. The whole thing seems to be controlled by music. So he said Lieutenant Kirk believed this was governed by some type of code. And she's like, sounds are just math, and math is just codes. He's like, you double that, you get the same pitch an octave higher. Triple the frequency, you get a triple fifth. 5 times the frequency is a major third. I don't understand. But the court, so somebody asked, why would an alien species write music the way we do? And they say, Vulcans theorized that it's their fundamental frequency, which makes them nice to the pitch. Yeah. Uhura asks people to please hum with her. Spock is the only one who does, because we know Spock likes to sing because of that short track. Oh my God. Try and follow Uhura's lead. Bum, 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 bum. Bum, 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 bum. Bum, 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 bum. This is not as exciting as the flower dance, or the leaf dance, the plant dance. You know what I'm talking about. Star Trek 5. Sorry, boys. Yeah. Is that a woman? They're all climbing up a hill when they get there. Poor Uhura. I'll be honest. Uhura as a character, her thing, and you might be vain. It might be vain, but Uhura as a character was always about beauty. She wanted to be beautiful forever. This character is clearly not worried about that. And I think it's a shame, because we knew who Uhura was, and it's not what this lady is. So Spock is saying, if we're logical at that the comet communicates through music, it's logical to assume it's speaking to us right now. So Uhura's like, how do we communicate to it to lower our force field. Lower the force field. And Uhura says, let me try something. She sings a different. I'm sorry. I shouldn't even be attempting to re-sing this. But Uhura sings it, and the force field went down. And yet they all have oxygen still. They should be dying in space. But instead, they all have oxygen, and they all beamed over to the Enterprise. And hey, they beamed to the regular transporter room. Why didn't they beam to the medical transporter that we saw last week, the emergency sickbay transporter, where they had a person who needed serious medical treatment? So the alien Sherpers said you weren't going to do anything. You should have been nice. You promised not to hurt anything. And Pike is like, what? And Spock beams back, and Pike is like, for the record, Spock didn't touch anything, or something to that effect. So we were told this ship was far more powerful than the Enterprise, including far faster, but they're not that much. And the security chief says we were told that this ship was, the Enterprise was no match for this ship. We've got to get out of here. And Pike is like, no, if we leave, somebody else will just have to fight them. And it's true. But they should have left. So Pike is saying, we have to save that planet. We brought us down that force field. Now what can we do to move the comet? And now Spock is saying, what if the comet moved itself? That could be something. Pike is saying, is everyone ready? You only get one shot at this. Maximum impulse. They're gaining on us. That's number one. Ortegas, I used to brag you were the best pilot at the academy. He's like, word gets around. What's your point, sir? Time to prove it, Lieutenant. And they get in front of the Comet. Invasive pattern Ortegas, Gamma 1. And everybody looks crazy. Like, Ortegas, Gamma 1. Nobody's heard of that. That's the whole point. This way you can't prove that they're wrong after they put it on screen. So they try to get down. No. Only well, maybe only Ortegas know what it is, but it seems like everybody's chasing her to find out what it is. It finally goes down, like into the computer, I guess, what to do. Ortega says that they've stopped firing. And Uhura says she thinks they're hailing now. We got some beautiful shots of the Enterprise flying around the comet, I'll be honest. So Pike parks the Enterprise right in front of the comet. He says, shut down all systems except for life support. So like, okay, they're going to hide. And he's like, okay, ready for the Shepherds now. On screen, you just shut off all the systems except life support. How can you bring them on screen? So nevertheless, Pike brings them on screen, and he says, "We surrender. We surrender. Your damage has caused all systems to be off except life support." And the guy, the shepherd alien, is like, "And what if we choose not to accept your surrender?" And Pike's like, "Well, if you don't accept our surrender, we're just going to crash into the comet, and your comet's going to get blowed the fuck up. And we'll crash into your comet. Hell, even if you don't help us, we're just going to crash into your comet and, destroy your comet. So please help us." Anyway, there's no immediate response. They shut off their their video, and it only takes another minute or so for them to realize that they've got nothing left they can do, and they went ahead and say, "Okay, we'll be right there." And that's it. They rescue the Enterprise, they pull up a whole bunch of stuff they need, and they keep everybody safe, and that's it. They do send I don't know if this is a shuttle coming back or a shuttle going. It appears to be a shuttle going back to the Enterprise. Anyway, so they tell Spock it's his turn. So Spock was apparently hiding with a shuttle in the debris field, and Spock is cutting through the ice. He apparently was supposed to take the biggest piece of the comet and lead it safely away from the planet. But of course, it's always more important than that. There's more to do than just keep it. There's more to do than just keep the comet away from the planet. For some reason, the shuttle got snagged and is actually ripping the comet apart. And they're done, they're out. And number one is saying the subligation is moving the comet off course. Pike says, and for the record, we're not touching it. But where's Lieutenant Spock? We get another nice scene of the comet passing the planet, and the comet has actually deposited a bunch of water vapor into the planet's atmosphere. And now Spock is saying this will permanently change the atmospheric composition of the planet. It'll make it more amenable to plant growth, agriculture, and one might surmise planetary development. So the original inhabitants basically lived in a desert, and now it's going to rain on them. And so now Pike is saying, so did it actually bring life? And the shepherds are hailing. And he says, you have seen the glory and the mercy that is Mahatanit. And Pike is saying, you're right, we witnessed a miracle. And now the alien says, perhaps in the future, you will not be so quick to judge the faith of others. And Pike can't even say yes. And the alien says, so we will not part as enemies. We will part as friends. And Pike's happy. The aliens are happy because even though they've never, ever had to deal with so much water before, they are happy to feel that it is water and not something more sickening. to do. Anyway, they put their hands together, and I thought it would be fun if they got sick and melted, because they weren't made to live in a humid atmosphere, in a humid climate, but they were. So Pike is asking, could there have been something more? He's trying to find an answer to his overlying problem, where he's sure he's going to die in 10 years. Anyway, Uhura says there was a lot of data that was in the original stuff. They only now was able to pull it out. And one of the pieces of data that was in it was this picture. It was a picture of the picture of the solar system a couple of days ago. And here's where things get weird. When they zoom in on the image, here's that ship. And there's an Enterprise. And she's saying, Rebecca Romijn is saying, you're saying that the robot. The Comet sent this before Spock knew what angle it would be coming in on. And they're like, no, this sent the exact same photo as one I would take hours later. There is no way the Comet could have foretold that from 2,000 years ago. It's impossible. And yet, nevertheless, it happened. So Spock tells her one last time, Starfleet would be fortunate to have an officer like you, of course. And that's Spock, I think, giving the wink wink that he has some feelings for Uhura. If she wants to stay, he'd pick her over Nurse Chapel, the asshole, anyway. And now we've got yet another closing scene with Pike and number one in his quarters. And she's like, neither one of us could have predicted how this would have gone. So she's saying, so just because you receive a message from the future doesn't mean you understand how it works. And he's like, we're not talking about the Comet anymore. Number one says, don't throw your life away. And Pike says, I've accepted my fate. What if you're wrong, she says? What if fate is what you make it? And anyway, Pike starts going through the names of the kids he's saving, that he will save in 10 years. And they're all like 8 to 10 years old right now. And he brings up all the info he can find on them, which apparently is a single entry for each of them. Dun, 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 dun. And the episode is over. Well, I'll be honest. It was a bit better than last week. That said, I really can't just let it ignore I think there were three major problems I had this week. One, it's not our Uhura. Two, you can't just retcon the fact that Hypo sprays are painful now. And three, I really don't like that. Who's going on the away missions? Usually the first officer or the captain would go. In this episode, neither went. Sorry, you got the Defiant behind me now for this point. Much better ship. So yeah, I'm going to give this episode, like, realistically, I'd guess this is a 5. This is a 5 out of 10. It annoyed me for sure. It really, really broke the Uhura character for me, especially so because she's still alive. It's just disrespectful. It's disrespectful to her character completely. And I hope she one day is feeling up well enough to make that complaint in person. She should say, "What the hell are you people doing? I got my background handed to me from Gene himself. From Gene himself." Anyway, 5 out of 10. And I hope to do some more Strange New Worlds videos before the next episode comes out next week. Keep an eye on that. Guys, check out the channel. Check out older videos if you want. Check out my playlists. Maybe there's something you enjoy more or less. Let me know. And with that, Qapla all, and Bird out.